I'm Bo Burtis. I'm one of the co-owners of the Oast Hop Farm in Jacobstown, New Jersey. We've been around for about 5 years now. We started with a small plot as a Kickstarter project. We reached out to our local friends and families and folks in the craft beer industry and had our Kickstarter. We started a little hop farm, and today we now have about 600 plants in the ground, 4 varieties. And we produce hops that we sell to Kane Brewing Company, to Triumph Brewing Company. We sell also to Demented, that we sold last year. We've also sold to the Bent Spoon, who has made a lemon hop infused ice cream, or actually sorbet, for the past couple of years. And they're looking to expand and grow out our product.
I'm Mary Lou Hanson of the Oast Hop Farm. I'm a co-founder along with Bo Burtis and Arthur Ray. This idea of ours started years ago because there was actually a hop shortage due to some various issues going on, and we sat here and thought about, wow, wouldn't it be cool to grow hops? And since we have the acres here, we kind of talked about it and said it'd be kind of neat, and then just threw it to the back burner, and then eventually came back around to it again because as the New Jersey craft brewing industry was starting to take off, one of the things you heard about is people saying, geez, we don't get access to fresh hops because of location. And at that point in time when we started, there were only about maybe 60 acres being grown in upstate New York. And they were taking care of the people in New York. So you could kind of hear the grumblings going on of, you know, being on the East Coast and not having the access to it. And we kind of said, hey, I wonder if we can make a go of this. And a Kickstarter project later, an LLC license later, and you know, some hard work and intensive labor, and all we can pay you in is food and beer.
We were sitting around one year at a barbecue competition. My friends Mary Lou and Art, who are my partners in the hop farm, we were sitting around. We had a competition barbecue team, and we were up late one night cooking barbecue. We were also avid home brewers. There happened to be a hop shortage at the time, and we came up with the wonderful idea of starting a hop farm, which we then sat on the back burner and didn't do much with for a couple of years. And then we got together one year for Thanksgiving. We're all very, very close, and we spent our Thanksgivings and Christmases together. And we sat down and said, hey, let's start a Kickstarter project. Let's start a hop farm. And we sort of gave new birth to the original concept, and then away we went.
We put up 2 different systems of growing hops, and the first year that we put them in the ground, we sat here like newborn parents just waiting and going, is this one? I don't know. I think, oh, look, here's one. And, you know, ran around the hop yard like new parents, proud as could be, like, look, they actually grew. And we're just ecstatic. And then when they start to grow up the core after we hung them up, we were even happier, and we sat here and watched them grow. And then when we coned, we kind of had to pull Bo off the ceiling because Bo's eyes are bigger than what the weight of a hop is. As he said, oh, we got hundreds of pounds out here, and I think our first year we sold off about 10 pounds. But first year growth, to have that much, we were tickled to death, and we realized this was a pretty cool thing, and we could actually affect the New Jersey craft beer industry by providing fresh hops. And what's kind of been a nice thing is we've sort of kicked this off in New Jersey and gotten other people interested and said, wow, like, it works. You can do this.
When we first started out, we did Cascades, we did Nuggets, we did a small batch of Centennials and a small batch of Newports. The Newports and Centennials did not take, but a lot of that had to do with location, where we grew them. There happened to be a lot of water and moisture in the area, so the roots ultimately rotted off. And then after our first year, we started a upper farm, we'll call it, another 250, 300, actually about 300 plants, and we did Columbus and Chinook. So all told, we have about 600 plants. We do Columbus, Nuggets, Chinooks, and Cascades.
Now we realize the labor intensity of it and sort of our ceiling limit of where you can get to by hand versus when you need to start, really investing into the machinery that's needed to have a full-fledged grown-out hop farm. So we've, like I said, we've kind of done well for our little acres here.
Our initial plan, we have two different varieties of trellises here. So our initial plan was to grow as a row crop, and we harvested local locust trees because they're rot resistant and because they grow straight as an arrow. We planted them every 35 feet, and then every 3 feet between those we put our hop rhizomes, and we grow from there. Hops like to grow vertically. They grow at about 18 feet. After that, after we sunk our posts, then we put 5/16 inch aircraft cable, and we ran lines down and then put guy lines at the end so that they would sit in place. And then we dropped every 3 feet, we dropped, it's called hop core. It's actually cocoa core that spun into a yarn. We dropped that down, and then the hops grow vertically up those. And then as we developed our hop product, and actually as we developed the farm, what we decided to do was to try a different trellis system, which was grown on a grid, on a 5x6 grid. So every 5 foot by 6 foot, we put a plant. Our posts were 12 feet apart and then 35 feet down from there, again making a giant grid. And then what we could do is we could put the same 5/16 inch aircraft cable down, and then a smaller, actually 1/4 inch aircraft cable in between those rows, so that you create, again, a grid, and then we can grow the plants vertically up from there. So we use, again, we use a hop core there, we drop the lines down, peg them, and then the hops will grow up.
Basically our season starts probably early March, I think, is when we started. We got our ground tilled, and by about mid-April, early April, I think, is when we first put our rhizomes in, which is what the hop plant grows from. So it's a spreading rhizome, which kind of the nice thing when we looked into it is in theory, as long as your rhizome stays healthy, basically you can keep propagating your farm over and over again from your original plants. And from the time they go in the ground, it took us, I think, about 6 weeks or so to actually have little plants coming out of the ground. And then we kind of looked at it and said, okay, I guess we got to get some strings in. So up in the bucket, Bo went and we dropped these strings down, and taking what they call a hop clip gun. And you use a little W, a form W, to pinch the string into the ground. And then eventually what you do is, as soon as they get enough growth on them, because they're a bine with a B, not a vine, they have a little, almost like a foot on them that starts to grab hold. Once you train them and they go with the sun, they'll take themselves up. You just kind of come along and cut off any runners that start to go out and want to travel, and keep the vine going up. And then you feed them till about the time they flower. So a nice kind of nitrogen base. It seems like the more you throw at them, the better they thrive. And once they start to flower and cone, you kind of stop feeding them and you let them go. And it's really kind of cool to see. You'll go from this little tiny flower to all of a sudden you see this little nub of a cone that eventually grows into this thing. And once you come out here and you open up and you see the lupulin in them, you sit here and smell them. You're like, wow, this is a pretty interesting smell. And even we had some that dried last year, and we came out here this spring. You pulled a cone off that sat through the winter, sat through a blizzard, and still smelled like a fresh hop almost.
Statewide, I think there's probably 8, maybe 10 farmers. We've been fortunate. We've worked closely with several different farmers throughout New Jersey, because our goal ultimately is to help be a part of that, the ground floor of developing this industry. So I think I said 8. I would be surprised if there was more than 15 acres being grown in the entire state right now.
It's about 120 days, I think, roughly till harvest. So by the time they're up, we're looking to harvest about the end of August. Right in that time frame is the optimal time to get them off and get them into brewer. So we kind of have to try to start judging about the beginning of August where we're at, so brewers can start working out their schedule of where they want to be so that they can throw them into wherever they want to put them into the process so that we can get to them. Almost sometimes they go in the day they've come off. A couple of brewers have been out. I think Triumph in particular was out here last year, and they were literally going from the field into the brew that day. A couple of them will take them, they'll keep them cold and use them whenever their schedule is. So it's a quick process. You know, the most labor intensive part is in the spring, getting everything ready and getting the strings hung, and then you kind of just wait around and you watch them grow, and you watch out for things like downy mildew and aphids and Japanese beetles who like to munch on the leaves and some other things. You try to manage that as best as possible, and then to the point where we cone, where we're getting ready to harvest, and then that's, you know, the next labor intensive part of this, where you know, we got to get these things down and these binds, the cones off the binds, and then package in a way that we can use. And we found laundry bags like you send your kid off to college with. Those cheap laundry bags work great. In fact, the brewers like them because they can just literally take bag and all, throw it right into their process and be done with it. So, you know, and then after that we come back and we just kind of mow everything over, kind of put it to bed for the winter time, and, you know, wait till spring.
So the New Jersey hop industry is or sort of lack thereof, is in a very fledgling state right now. And what we have done is we've worked closely with Rutgers Agricultural Extension to develop market systems for the New Jersey hop crops, or for actually Mid-Atlantic hop crops. And the biggest thing that we found sort of going forward into this, there's a ceiling for fresh hops. But even more than that, there are process issues. So in order to process these hops, we need to, first we need to pick them. And after we pick them, then we need to dry them. And then if we're going to dry them, we need to pelletize them. And then if we can pelletize them, then we can market them out and sell them. There's a couple of different ways that we can do that. First off, we sell all of our hops fresh, but there's a very volatile, hops are volatile in terms of spoilage from a fresh perspective. So we need to move them within 48 hours of picking. Clearly that creates issues for growing, or for marketing our hops. At this point, because we're so small, we can do that, but there obviously is a ceiling there. So the next step then would be to dry hops. One of the biggest issues we've come into, or come up with, is that picking hops, it's very labor intensive. So to mechanize that process, we need to then buy a hop harvester. Typically they're going to be imported from Germany or Poland. Used small level that does maybe 12 acres is going to cost $50,000 to $60,000 before installation, just to buy it and put it in, you know, and drop it on the property. So you're closer to $70,000, $80,000, $85,000, $90,000 to mechanize the harvest process. In my opinion, the only way that we're going to grow this industry in the state is if we develop a cooperative, a hop cooperative or a growers cooperative, that we can then, I burped.
Sorry, I didn't even hear it. So what we need to do, you can pick up there.
Okay. So what we need to do is we need to develop a hop cooperative or a growers cooperative so that we can pool our money and our resources to buy the mechanization so that we can do larger acreage or get higher volume of hops. From there, then we can look at drying our hops and selling them as whole cone hops. And then from there, even the next step would be to then pelletize them. In my opinion, the logical progression of this is first we develop the cooperative, second we pool our resources and buy a hop harvester so that we can get 12, 15 plus acres harvested annually. And then the third stage of that would be then to buy an Oast, or have a centralized Oast or place where we can dry our hops. And then from there we can go into the pelletized and pelletizing hops, and then doing sort of a larger distribution of the hops.